What is going on, all you Tacti-Cool kids out there? Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, and gear the right way, with God, the Almighty, at the center, commander of angel armies, Lord God of hosts. That's what that means. Judeo-Christian values and real-world first-hand experience. Today we're going to talk about tactical kit. I might title it My First Tacti-Cool Kit. If you want to get into the world of tactical stuff, tactical gear, and you don't really know where to start, coming from somebody who's been blessed to be a professional gunfighter most of his adult life and has run a lot of different kit a lot of different ways, I'll try and pass some of this knowledge on to you. Save you some trials and tribulations and maybe some wasted money. That's what we're going to talk about today. I am going to put in a short version of the bio because it's germane to today's topic, to establish some street cred, some bona fides with you guys if you haven't heard it before. It'll be a short one. Talk about different kit used, and then we'll get into some recommendations. Hopefully you enjoy it. Before we get into the show, don't forget to scroll down and do a tactical assault on that like, subscribe, and comment feature on whatever app, if they have them, that you're listening to this on. Bio. First and foremost, I am a Christian. That is number one in my life, serving God, following Jesus. Combat veteran, served in the United States Marine Corps and the Army. Also law enforcement veteran, private contractor, state rifle and pistol champion. Professional big game hunter and guide. If you feel called to support, check out Patreon. There should be a link in the show notes. With that, I am your host, Michael Milito, and I am blessed to serve you today. As you might deduce from that quick bio, I have worn tactical kit for a lot of years in a lot of different ways and a lot of different roles, whether that be Marine Corps in combat, or as a private contractor, as an instructor, as a police officer, competition shooter. I'm going to try and help you guys out today. That's what this is for, right? Do this, guys, to serve the community. I could likely make a lot more money than I have in the past doing other jobs, but then you guys wouldn't get the content at the regularity and with the quality hopefully you guys find in the value of this content. That's the whole reason, to help you guys. So let me help you guys today with some tactical kit. First, let me lay down some reality for you. A lot of guys run the kit that they run because they don't have a choice. It's what's issued to them. And unless you're in a really specialized unit, which I've been blessed to be a part of, but if you're in just a mainline infantry unit or something, you deal with the kit you're given. And you like it. Or you don't. But you run the kit you're given, right? In general, that's the way it works. There may be some liberty on, I want to run my mag pouch this way or that way. But a lot of times even that, where you're going to run your med kit is dictated by SOP. And if that doesn't work great for you, tough. And as you listening to this, you get a lot more liberty and freedom into how to configure and set up your kit. So just realize, right, not that there's anything wrong with Marine Corps infantry. I was Marine Corps infantry. I was an assaultman, MOS that no longer exists. Specialized infantry. Specialized as far as taking on bigger things and doing demolition. Or 11 Bravo in the Army. You've also hold the MOS of 11 Bravo in the Army. I served in that branch as well. Just because that infantry guy, or your buddy who is an infantry guy that has his tactical sphere, that's what he knows because he runs it that way, does not mean that's the best way to run it. A lot of times, again, in mainline units, you run your kit that way because that's the way you have to run it. And that's the kit that you have. And there is some freedom and liberty depending on the unit, but a lot of times that's what you have and you deal with what you got. Right? Marines are not an awesome fighting force. They're not arguably some of the best riflemen and gunfighters on the planet because they have the best kit. It's because they train hard. They have a warrior spirit. Being a warrior is a lot more than just kit. So just realize that. Just because they run it this way doesn't mean that's the way that you should run it. So look at kind of some overarching themes of maybe how they run stuff, why they run stuff, and see, does this apply to me? Yes, no, maybe. Like I would carry an M67 fragmentation grenade. So on my kit, I would have an M67 fragmentation grenade pouch. You might not have an M67 fragmentation grenade, so you might not run that on your kit. Right? It's just an easy example. And they might have that in a certain place where if you don't have it, you might run your kit differently because you want to put something else in that place because you're not going to quickly grab a fragmentation grenade. That is just one example. Let's start your Tacti-Cool kit with what I consider one of the most important things. Boots. Right? In order for you to fight, in order for you to do anything with your gun, in order for you to do anything with your hands, your feet, your Lamborghinis must first get you there. So let us dive into the world of the Lamborghinis, the Subarus, the footwear that's going to allow you to get where you need to go. Locate, close with, and destroy the enemy. Right? That includes movement. Locate, closing with, and destroying includes movement, meaning your feet. Now, combat boots, if you're looking, I don't have the same feet that you have, obviously. My feet are different. I tend to run really wide as far as feet go, and I wish I had known this sooner. A lot of the time I spent in the infantry, sadly, I wore boots that were too big because they needed to be big to fit the wideness of my feet. I didn't do my due diligence. I would just issue whatever I was issued, which a lot of times was several sizes too large to fit the width of my feet. Could have went with several sizes smaller and had a better fitting shoe, and it had been lighter weight, enabling me to run faster, move faster. So I'm trying to pass that on to you. The boot fit is important. Different brands make different widths. There's a couple, if you're looking for a strict, hard use, heavy duty, tactical combat boot, I'm going to give you a couple of names. Danner, Bates. Those are both really good brands. They're names in the industry. They have been a standard for a long time for good reason. Both of those make really good boots. Whatever one applies to you, right? Maybe you are going to roll desert tan. Maybe you're going to roll black. Also, really good and good on the surplus market. And I think some other companies like Rothko and stuff make them kind of new, but very similar to the old military surplus jungle boot. Jungle boots have a lot going for them. If you're not in a super cold climate, you don't know where to start, you're maybe on a budget, jungle boots are great. They served our military for decades well. I went in back in the day when we had the old woodland camo and the boots we had to polish. Right, jungle boots are good kit. They're not the best, they're not the most state-of-the-art, but they're good. They're good, especially if you can find a pair, if you're going to actually be, doing stuff, not just looking like you're doing stuff, right? But actually doing stuff. You're going to beat up your boots anyway. If you can find a good deal on a pair that fits you of good jungle boots, that's not a bad place to start. Again, this is like for beginners. You're better off with a pair of jungle boots with the proper socks. You break in and use and your feet are toughened up and hardened up, and that you actually put miles on, and the super expensive boots that you have sitting in your closet that you don't hike in, don't ruck in. But the Bates, the Danners, and the old school jungle boots for boots if you're going to go a strict combat boot. Now, I don't particularly like that, and most of the guys that I know that are in more specialized stuff, when I did more specialized stuff, don't particularly like the full-length combat boot. They have their advantages. I know why the infantry uses them. But once your feet are pretty tough and your ankles are fairly robust, myself and a lot of the other guys that do more specialized stuff, or have done more have done more specialized stuff, as I do this podcast now. But a lot of the guys that do that kind of stuff, like that actually operate, there's a couple of brands that I'm going to say that we really like, that you see very commonly. Merrell Moabs, Solomon's. There are other brands. Those are probably the two most common. I really like Trail Runners. They're kind of my go-to. They're what I wear most times, most days still. I can and do practice and still, shoot in them and work out in them. They're great. So Trail Runners I really like, or the kind of low top, medium top, depending on your environment, hiking shoes or Trail Runners. A lot of the specialized guys prefer those for good reason. A guy that actually does this kind of stuff knows the value of being light on your feet and being highly mobile. Being a fast-moving target is a lot better than being a slow-moving or stationary target, without getting into the whole cover concealment movement kind of thing. But the trail runners. So if you're not specifically needing combat boots, you might look there. Again, you might want to start with those just if you're not used to rucking and hiking and stuff, just for the ankle support. But the trail, if you're already in pretty good shape and you're used to rucking and hiking and doing that kind of stuff, those are a good place to start. I, for years, professionally ran the Merrell Moabs. I got away from them. They have really tough soles, which is good if you're putting lots of miles on them in really harsh terrain like the desert Southwest. But they're not the quietest if you're trying to sneak up on man or beast. It's kind of one of the reasons I got away from them. But if that's not applicable to you, they're really good. And the Solomons are also, again, really common in that kind of world. And I think for good reason. As important as the boot itself are the socks. I really like wool socks. Some kind of real natural wool, as pure as you can get it. I also really like tight-fitting nylon dress socks. And you might think, wait, why dress socks? Well, as any infantryman might tell you, there's an old infantry thing where put on really tight nylon socks next to your skin, and you may or may not put on a second pair of socks. That way all the friction between the boot and the sock and your foot mostly occurs between those shoes and or the second pair of socks and those tight pair of socks. Those tight pair of nylon socks stick tight to your foot, really decreasing the amount of friction over time put on your foot, decreasing the blood, the blisters, the hot spots, all that stuff. This is real world stuff. So there's a little pro tip for you there, those tight-fitting nylon dress socks, at least until your feet are fairly tough. But even me, when I go on long rucks, I prefer the tight nylon socks. And whether or not I will put on wool socks or something over it depends on the environment. But that's really important. And there's a reason I started there before I got to the cool Tacti-Cool war belts and stuff like that. You don't just want to put it on and strut in front of the mirror and look cool and post it on Instagram. If you actually want to do stuff, feet are important. Let's move up to pants. Some of my favorite tactical pants that I've actually used as a professional, as opposed to people that don't actually do this stuff. But the Cry pants. They're expensive. They're good. The Cry pants with the knee pads are really good. I can attest I had a pair that I used for years and years and years. All kinds of different assignments. They're good. They're expensive. Also, I really like Proper. Proper, they're not really expensive. They make really good pants. Depending on your environment, you may decide you want 100% cotton. You may decide you want 100% polyester. I'm not a big fan of poly-cotton blends. Wearing a garment of different sorts, I'm not about that. But Proper, you might look at them. They make a lot of really good pants that they're kind of made really similar to a lot of the other big expensive pants, but they're kind of that standard brand that doesn't have the cool name affiliation. But Proper makes good stuff, and there's nothing wrong with 511. I've worn 511s as a professional for a time, but all those brands, get a good pant that fits what you want. If it's an all-around pant, I like a khaki tan, a khaki to a light brown to a dark brown. That's my favorite kind of go-to. I like my stuff consistent, whether I'm running it in a covert roll or an overt roll. Kind of like my stuff set up the same way. And a lot of that is based on the pants that I'm wearing. What's in what pocket, where, how my gun belt fits on my inner belt, where my keepers go, all that kind of stuff. I'm pretty big on the consistency, and those kind of pants, especially the ones without the big cargo pockets, they don't scream tactical, especially if you're not dressing tactical. If you have a pair of normal-looking hiking boots and you want to go covert and you throw on a brown and green flannel plaid shirt and you're running around the West, right? You don't really stand out. Apply that to whatever environment you're in. Whereas if you're wearing multicam pants, you know that really doesn't blend in anywhere unless you're at a training class. So just give some thought to that. When I was the commander of a tactical team, and I was actually blessed to be in charge of our SOPs and all that, that included uniforms and uniform items. And I had a real thought process on our uniforms. And I prefer those kind of khaki. If you can get a chocolate color pants, I like those even better, because I'm pretty hard on stuff and I stain stuff. But that regular khaki colored pants. There's a lot of khaki pants out there that aren't tactical. They blend in, right? Like Dickies or the canvas work pants, the Levi's, stuff like that. So it doesn't scream tactical. We'll skip underwear because you should. They're useless. They don't really do anything. Underwear is a scheme to separate you from your money. Unnecessary, superfluous. So we're going to move to the belt system. You're likely going to run an inner belt and an outer belt if you're running a gun belt, a war belt. And that's kind of one of the ways to tell kind of an amateur from somebody that actually does it. Do they have a belt system, and do they have keepers? Somebody that's got all the Tacti-Cool kit and they don't have the few dollars they didn't spend on keepers, that tells me right away they don't train real hard. Because the first time you train hard without keepers and your gun belt goes sideways and your holster's halfway across your back and your dump pouch is in front of you like a cod piece, right, then you kind of know. It might be their first rodeo. And keepers don't have to be expensive. You can make your own with a 550 cord, and they sell these little clasps of all places at like the little hobby supply stores. They're like 550 cord clips, and you can make your own keepers like that. They're definitely strong enough. You can also buy pre-made keepers. They're common in law enforcement and the tactical world. Get them in black, get them in tan, real big for police officers and wearing Sam Browns. The inner belt is simple for me. There's a couple that I really like. I served in both the Marine Corps and the Army. I'm going to tell you here, the Army has the better design for the BDU belts. It's a better system. The buckle is better, although the overall belt itself is pretty similar. But the U.S. Army, like a BDU belt, whatever they actually call it, is generally just like a coyote brown or a tan belt. They're not expensive. They're great. They hold up a lot. They're really strong. If you want, there's also the 511. That's kind of my go-to everyday belt. It looks very similar. It's a bit beefier. It's a good concealed carry belt. Most of them, at least the ones that I have, come in dual colors. So you can run like green and black or tan and black, which should blend in most things, right? It'll blend in if you put the black side out. It wouldn't be out of place on a pair of dress pants and a suit, although you might want to go to a leather belt for that. Wouldn't be out of place in a tactical class. It wouldn't be out of place, again, if you get the right colors on tan pants. You put the tan side out on tan pants if you're doing covert with your plaid shirt and rock on. I think that's the 511 TDU, 1.75 inch. A key on the 1.75 inch. If you're running man pants, then your belt loops are probably big enough to handle the 1.75. And that added length will give you a little bit of stability on running your gun. Now, for the war belt. Now, I'm a big fan, if you get the freedom to, I like running most of my kit on a war belt. I've done many different systems. I've run the majority of it on body armor, on an LBV, on body armor, on the body armor without the LBV, without a war belt, with a war belt. For me, I like most of the weight and the stuff on my belt. I'm a much bigger fan of the war belt. I like the weight there, especially, like I've had assignments where I'm working 12-hour grave shifts. I like the weight on my hips instead of on my back, just for longevity. Even if I'm wearing body armor, I like taking as much of that weight off my back and my spine as I can. Go look at how many cops that do that for decades have back issues. I like to take as much weight off of my back as I can. If you're only having it for like a bump in the night and you're going to throw it on and you think you're going to have it on for a couple of minutes and take it off or whatever, maybe that doesn't apply to you. But if you're going to be wearing it for hours and hours and hours, I like the war belt. And I like running, not that I won't ever run stuff on my chest or on an LBV or armor, I will, but I like the majority of it, and especially my go-to items on my war belt. Now this may shock you, but a good one, especially for the money, is the Condor. I think it's called the gun belt. I had a lot of guys work for me. I didn't dictate what brand they had to buy. I just had to meet certain specifications. And quite a few of them bought this Condor belt, and I thought for sure it would break. A lot of the Condor stuff that we got did break, which I'll get into later. But these belts, I don't remember anybody having a problem with them. Caveat, get the one with the Cobra buckle, not the plastic buckle. If you're actually going to use it hard, the plastic buckles can break. You definitely don't want your war belt buckle breaking. Also, there is the 511 Maverick, and some of these systems have the inner and outer belt Velcro. That's really good if you're just going to run it like that. I prefer just regular inner belt with keepers. I have done the dual belt thing with the Velcro. It's not bad. There's nothing wrong with it. You may prefer it. Those are all good options. That inner Velcro belt with the outer belt will alleviate the need for the keepers. I like my normal belt, the inner belt, to be just a functional belt. But if I take the war belt off, I can still just walk around and it doesn't look obvious that I just had a war belt on, because I have a pretty strange looking one-sided Velcro belt. That belt system seems to work really good. Although it's not my preferred, it's a good place to start. I prefer like the 511 Riggers belt. It's just a regular belt on the inside. And there's a couple of companies, 511 included, that make a much bigger padded. You'll see what I'm talking about. Like the inner belt, like the Riggers belt, slips inside of the much bigger padded belt. That said, I run on the much lower body fat percentage side. I got pretty bony hips, right? I got that going on. So if I'm wearing the war belt for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, I like that extra padding. If you're going to be wearing the stuff for a long time or going on long distances, I prefer the bigger, thicker, padded stuff. That being said, there's probably more people that prefer the thinner ones like I just discussed, but any of those are a good option for a war belt. Now, war belts are, as highly customizable kind of as what EDC knife people carry. I'm going to give you a little bit about some generalities, not everything specifically and exactly where I run it, but some generalities you may want to adopt and why. I'm going to start on the left side. I like right away on my war belt a fixed blade get off me tool, aka a knife, a push dagger. I prefer a push dagger. I like to paint the handle the same color, and I like to tuck it in behind a pouch or something so I know where it is and I can grab it easily, but it blends in. Nobody else is going to know that it's there. And if I need to get somebody off of me in a hurry, it's an option. Doesn't have to be a big knife. In fact, I prefer it not to be like a giant, large Rambo knife. A push dagger, a spike, something like that. A lot of us would run those kind of things, spikes, push daggers. I prefer it on the left side, just slightly back by the buckle. I could grab it with both hands, but primarily my offhand, because my primary hand is going to be running a gun, but maybe I can't get to it. Maybe that's pinned behind me, or for whatever reason I need to get somebody off of me. I like that option. So that push dagger or spike kind of option. Again, I like to paint it the same color and tuck it into the war belt so that it can be felt before it is seen by said adversary. It can be an ugly business. And then what pouch I like to cover that with, generally my go-to emergency reload, my fastest reload for my handgun. That's what I like right there on the left of the buckle. If I can, with that get off me tool tucked under it, with my speed reload, whether I'm doing competition or police, military, private contracting, that reload right there where I can go down, grab it, and expose top magazine pouch for this first initial reload, so it's quick and fast. I want to be able to get to that ammo quick and fast, index it properly, insert it into the gun. Whatever mission I'm running, that almost never changes. Now when I go back from that, my other pistol reloads, I want at least one of them, and this is mission specific, right? If I'm on like a long ruck march, I might want all the rest of them covered. But I want at least one magazine with a covered clasp, Velcro, something, magazine pouch, so that if I'm rolling around, I get in a fight, I get in a foot pursuit, I literally have to swim down a river, go down a river to catch a suspect, been there, done that. Like I have some option that didn't fall out. Whatever the case might be, right? A lot of fights, a lot of stuff ends up on the ground. You want some kind of magazine that's retained in there. I like one of my magazine reloads to have some kind of cover, some kind of retention device, other than just the tension of the magazine pouch. But like a cover, a snap, something like that. How many pistol magazines you want to run on there is up to you. I would say probably at least 3 magazines, 1 in the gun and 2 spares. You may only want to run 1 spare if you're primarily running a long gun, which I'll get into. Behind my first pistol reload, if I'm running a long gun that day, I like my long gun emergency reload pouch, my fast one. And I like that setup right behind the pistol magazine pouch. So it's a quick index, continuity of training. If I need a mag, I go there. I'm going to the same place if I need a mag. I grab it the same way. This is going to be highly controversial. Most people would disagree with that, and that's fine. I like that first initial reload on my war belt to be a 20-round magazine for a couple of reasons. One, the 30 rounds are long, and if I'm rolling around on the ground doing stuff, trying to bend and run and stuff like that, it's less in the way. Also, if I have a 30-round magazine, if you know that kind of loading technique, you grab it and index it what's called like a beer can grip and shove it in. But with a 20-round mag, I can grab it exactly the same way and index it exactly the same way that I do my pistol magazines. Continuity of training. I'm likely to go to my default if my adrenaline and testosterone are pumping. I like that. And 20-round mag is still a lot of rounds. I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm saying I like my go-to. I'm not saying I won't run 30-round mags. I certainly will. But for that initial go-to, I need it right now. I need ammo right now. My gun is dry. I like a 20-round mag. And that pouch right there. When I start going further back around my body and it's less important about being able to squeeze and crunch and crawl and climb, you can put a 30-round mag on there. But for that initial one, for those reasons, I like the 20-round mag. Now, on this offside, I'm assuming I'm saying this for a right-hander. I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, you're going to have to reverse all this stuff or just go in the opposite order. But a lot of people, you might want to run a radio around this location, moving further to the left, kind of that 9, 10, 11. If you have a bigger radio, if you're running walkie-talkies or small radios, I actually prefer these on whatever my chesting is, my body armor, my LBV, my pack, because I'm a big fan of less stuff, right? If I don't have to have the mic cord and all the buttons, unless I'm doing super secret squirrel, like throat mic stuff, I like to just have it on like where my lapel is, and I can just hit it and reach my head over and talk and listen. And even if it's super loud, it's not hard to lift my shoulder up next to my ear. It's just less stuff to get caught, less wires, less this, less that. But if you are going to run a radio with a wire, this is probably a good place to run it. Behind that, if you're running handcuffs, handcuff key. I like the vast majority of the back of my war belt pretty flat. Not absolutely flat. I run stuff back there, but I run stuff back there that's flat. I like, even when I was doing urban stuff like the commander of a tactical team, I like to run an extra length 550 cord, the same color as my belt wrapped around that belt. That cordage should come in handy for a lot of stuff. Opening doors and not being there when you open them. Because if somebody in there is trying to kill me, guess where they're going to shoot when that door opens? The doorway. Guess where I don't want to be so I don't get shot? The doorway. You know, having a piece of that cordage and knowing how to tie a bowline knot, right? Not everything has to be solved with the gun. Use your brain. I like to run some spare cordage back there. It's flat. It really doesn't take up any more space. You might decide you want to run like a dump pouch back there that's flat most of the time. The flat back there is for a lot of reasons. Ground fighting, if you know how to ground fight, a lot of times you're on your back. You don't want a big bulge back there when you're trying to fight. Also for just the practicality of comfort and vehicle operations. If part of your stuff is convoys, executive protection, that kind of stuff where you're in and out of vehicles, getting snagged, riding long lengths of time, you don't want a big giant bulge back there that's uneven. So it can cause back injury if you have something that's really misshapen back there and you fall on it. And a big reason, if you're going to be carrying a pack, because that's where I like my pack to ride. The back of my pack, I like riding right there, kind of in the small of my back. If you got a bunch of junk on your war belt back there, that makes it hard. So I like a primarily flat back. Getting over to the business side, where your gun is. If I'm running open, which I will be if I'm running a war belt, meaning open carry, I want a holster with an active retention. Call it what you want. Some companies call it level 2, level 3. Not just a friction, right? I don't want just a friction holster if I'm running in the open. Because people know that I have a gun and people may try and grab that gun. I don't want them to just grab it and be able to pull it out, right? That's bad. Look at how many cops get shot with their own guns. A lot. I want a retention device, an active retention, meaning I have to physically do something. If I grab on that gun and pull it, it will not come out, no matter how hard I grab it, unless I do something so crazy like break the holster or the rail on the gun or something. I'm not getting it out of that holster. Different guys like different stuff. I prefer kind of a push down thumb because it doesn't seem to slow down my draw really any. Some guys like the rock and unlock method, but there's a couple of big names in the industry. The Blackhawk Omnivore, I like that one. It's a real fast holster. It's not crazy expensive, and pretty much any modern gun with a rail it'll work with. And if you want to run a gun light, there's a lot of those models that have particular popular models of flashlight, so it'll lock onto the flashlight. So if you want to run an STI 2011 or you want to run a Glock or whatever, you can with the light on it, or if it has a rail, it makes a little attachment. It'll lock onto that. There's also many good holsters from like Safariland. That's a real big name in the industry that if you have a common duty kind of gun, it'll work with. And different people have different preferences. But a good active retention holster, if you're actually going to do stuff, not just wear this for a training class or wear it around the house, if you're actually going to use it, I would encourage you to get an active retention holster. And this applies to you if you're not running a war belt and you just want to open carry. Like if you live in a place with a good gun culture where it's not uncommon. Like I'm here in northern Idaho. You go to a farmer's market, you go to a little fair, a little market, Walmart. It's not uncommon to see people open carrying here. I don't prefer it. I prefer the tactical advantage of concealed carry. Unless I'm doing something as a professional, I want to be a visual deterrent. I think there's a time for both. But if you're going to open carry, I would encourage you to have a holster with active retention. So if somebody can't just come and lift your gun out. And also buying you some time in ground fighting. Again, a lot of fights end up in ground fighting, even for professional gunfighters, because you can't just pull out and shoot everybody. Not everything is deadly force or starts out as deadly force. You may be on the ground when it turns into deadly force. Don't just hand them your gun. Metaphorically speaking. Don't make it easy for them to get your gun. So that active retention. You don't want your holster sliding around. So once you've got it set to the place where you want it on your war belt, have a way to make it stay there. Some holsters do this better than others. You may consider just something as simple as some muted color, coyote brown or green or whatever, duct tape on both sides of the holster, wrapping it around the belt so that holster position really will not change. And if you got that on there and you got your keepers, you should have a good consistent draw stroke, even if you do get in that ground fight or whatever. Also, right around this area is a good place for a tourniquet, depending on how flexible you are. Running a tourniquet directly behind your handgun, because the way that I run it and the way that my handgun runs when I run it at 3 o'clock, which is pretty much how I run open, concealed, OWB 3 o'clock, consistency, continuity of training. If I put a tourniquet right behind there, when I grab it and my thumb reaches over on the left side of my handgun, that tourniquet is generally not going to be in the way. And it's a good out-of-the-place way to have a tourniquet. For this, for an overt thing, really a cat tourniquet is kind of the industry standard. You can run it right behind your gun, or if you got the real estate in the front, you can run it right in the front of your gun to the side of the buckle. If you're really flexible, it doesn't matter. I can reach behind where my gun is with either hand. But you should put your tourniquet in a place, for obvious reasons, where you can reach it with either hand. And going on this, whether I'm carrying a war belt, or like when I did it professionally, or I'm concealed carrying day to day, my pockets pretty much stay the same too. Like on my off side, that's where I carry my EDC fixed blade, go-to fixed blade knife. So I can grab it if I can't get to my handgun on my strong side. I like to carry my go-to knife. A lot of people carry a folding knife, but a folding knife, fixed blade knife, in my opposite side of my gun pocket, my left pocket. Also, that's where I carry my flashlight, because I want my flashlight whether or not I have my war belt. You may decide you want a bigger flashlight on your war belt if you're not running one on your handgun. I really just usually have a flashlight that's pretty bright, that's about the same size as a handgun magazine, and I would run it in an extra handgun magazine pouch. Quick, easy way to put it on your war belt. But in general, I like to have a flashlight in my left pocket with my fighting knife anyway, because I like to have a flashlight whether or not I'm wearing the war belt, and just why not have it in the same place? There's no reason you can't have stuff in your pockets even if you have a war belt. Hopefully you're EDCing that stuff anyway. And this is really personal preference for me, but on my left side back pocket, that's generally where my cell phone goes. And then on my right side back pocket, that's generally where I'll run. Right now I run a SWAT T tourniquet back there, but I might run like a map and generally my wallet, right? The everyday stuff. My wallet, my identification. And I generally don't carry anything in my right side pocket. Like talking about the main pocket, because my gun is in front of that. So can't really get to it very easily anyway. And a lot of that stuff is specific to me. But a lot of that stuff was fairly common throughout when I had guys, and I was pretty liberal on how I would let them run their stuff professionally. There was a lot of continuity there on how they like to run stuff. Not exactly, not all the time, but it's pretty common. Now, let's move up to the torso. There are a couple of different ways you can do this here. You can run body armor, and you can put your stuff on your body armor, or you can run an LBV and put everything on your load-bearing vest. It's common vernacular. Or a chest rig. And you can run stuff on there. And the advantage of that is you can run it whether or not you have the armor. Because not every mission you may not want armor. If you're just on a recon mission, you're covering a large area, especially in really hot weather. You may not want that body armor. It's a pain in the butt. Wearing body armor all the time, as cool as it might sound, it's really, really arduous. Really. I think most people that do it professionally and wear it for like 8, 10, 12 hours a day, day after day, come to loathe it. So that gives you the advantage of if you're doing something and you don't want to and you have the liberty to not wear your body armor, you can just run the LBV and you have your same kit in basically the same place. The disadvantage of it is you got more stuff. So if you're wearing both, you got a lot more going on. You got straps and stuff that can get caught up. The simplicity of running everything directly on your body armor, like if your body armor has Molly or whatever on it, it's just simpler. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both. If you don't need as much stuff, you could run the rest of your stuff in your pack and just have the war belt and your body armor, or no body armor. I'm not going to get too much into packs today. A pack is its own thing. And a lot of that's going to depend on your mission, your logistics, and your supply train or lack thereof, what you're going to have in your pack. So we're just going to talk about mostly these couple of things. Now I'll start with body armor because if you're wearing both, that's going to be closest to your body. Here's what I'm going to tell you about body armor. Bigger and more is not always better. A lot of people get into that mindset, especially I think here in America. More is better. You know, if level 2 is good, level 3 must be better. And if level 3 is good, then level 4 must be better. But I'm going to tell you, if you got to carry it for long periods of time, more is not always better. Firepower versus mobility is a thing. Where is that trade-off for you? You be the judge of that. I would let my guys run beefier armor if they wanted, but I would issue them and give them level 3. I think that's the best balance. You have to get a lot more weight for the potential that you might get somebody with like light armor piercing rounds or something like that. The vast majority of rounds that bad guys are in general going to run, which is your common handgun rounds and your AK-47 or common range fodder 223 rounds. I think that's your best bang for your buck. And you have to carry a lot more weight for the potential of maybe one of those other rounds. And if you're doing that hour after hour, year after year, I think the juice is not worth the squeeze on the firepower versus mobility equation there. That's just me. If you're not mostly on your feet and you're mostly in a vehicle or something, you may decide you want to go beefier. That's up to you, but more is not always better. Now for the armor itself, your most affordable and effective for the money is just going to be your AR-500, and that's a type of steel. There is an AR-500 body armor company. They're not bad. They're especially not bad for the money, especially the plates. A lot of that is going to be contour. And that's really important, right? Don't just overlook that. Don't just look at the rating. Like, oh, this has got a good rating. The contour is important. If you want to be mobile, I prefer the swimmer's cut. You may prefer something else. Depending on your body type, you may not want a curve. You may want a single curve, a double curve. You should probably try these out before you just order them online if there's a place you can go. But the cut and the shape is really important. Like, you're a tall, skinny guy. Are you a pretty stout, wide guy? Like, not all this stuff going back to like the military. They pretty much issue sappy plates. They come in sizes, but the sappy plate is the sappy plate. And that's a little bit different. Instead of it just being steel, that's steel with ceramic and some other thing on the outside. Your most common steel plates, a lot of that is going to be, they're made out of similar steel. The AR-500, I believe, is a rating. I'm not a metallurgist. But a lot of them a lot of the companies are going to use similar steel. Just what do they do after that? They put spall coatings on there. What else do they add to it? Do they bend it in a certain way? All those kind of things. So look at that. Also, the other kind of plates. There are soft plates. I'm primarily talking about the outer worn armor. The inner worn armor, like a police officer wears, that probably isn't going to apply to you as much unless you're doing executive protection. If you're a cop, you get issued what you get issued, and that's mostly Kevlar. It's literally a Kevlar vest that you wear under your shirt. If you're doing mostly covert stuff, you might look at that. If you are doing that covert stuff, by far the best that I have ever seen, way better than anything that I was issued, Citizen Armor. If they're still in business, they are kind of a game changer in the soft covert. So if you want to be like the gray man, if you're doing that executive protection or that more clandestine work for one of those 3-letter government agencies, and you can, that Citizen Armor, it's awesome. And it doesn't make you look like you're wearing body armor. Like, you can look at a cop and you can tell they're wearing body armor. That Citizen Armor is really good, comfortable, and it doesn't look like you're wearing body armor. It kind of is made to work with a compression shirt. Anyway, that stuff's really good if you're talking about covert, but let's get back to the plate carrier. That's by far the most common. There are other kind of plates. You can even run the softer Kevlar plates, which are really nice if you're doing a lot of highly mobile, covering a lot of ground stuff in your plate carrier, and you can put like trauma plates, hard plates, in conjunction with those in different ways and kind of make your own, kind of customize it. There's the ceramic plates, there are the polymer plates, which are becoming more popular, and that may sound crazy, but if it works, it works. People at one time thought that the polymer gun thing was a fad and wouldn't work and wouldn't last, but you know, Glocks, as much as I rag on them, are some of the most durable guns out there. So just because it's polymer, don't discount it. And lightweight is a really, really big asset in the body armor world. Some thoughts on that. Now for the carriers themselves, I'm going to tell you to start with the Crye JPC. Whatever iteration they're on, I don't know what generation they're on now, but the Crye JPC. This is where I said to get back to the Condor stuff breaking. When I was a commander of a tactical team, started out with, I believe, the Crye, and I had a hard time getting them. This May, I don't remember what was going on, but there was a big thing with body armor. I don't remember exactly when this was, but I remember it being really hard to get those. So somebody came to me and said, these Condors look pretty much the same, let's just get those. And we got a bunch of them, and they were cheap. And I was in charge of that kind of stuff, so I said, why not? And I do believe, honestly, every single one that we actually issued out broke. All the Condor plate carriers broke in the same place, right at the top where the kind of plate carrying apparatus pocket, whatever you want to call it, joined to the strap on the top. Now, these are guys that were wearing these for, 8, 10, 12-hour shifts day after day. If you're just going to wear it and walk around a little bit around the house, or you're going to have it as like an exercise assistant to add resistance when you're doing your pull-ups and stuff, it's probably going to be fine. But if you're going to hard use it, every single one of those broke. Every single one. So the Condor plate carriers, if you're actually going to hard use them, I can't recommend them. The Crye JPCs, they're not cheap, but they're really good. And here's another one, but you got to be a big dude. I'm not a giant guy. Reminds me of a story when I met one of the patrons in person. Yeah, if you've ever seen the movie Braveheart. And I don't have a TV, but even way back when I was in school, they showed us the movie Braveheart. And William Wallace comes in and they're expecting something, I guess, different. And he's like, oh yeah, William Wallace. And I don't know the exact quote. It's like 7 feet tall and he shoots fire from his backside. And he's like, I am William Wallace. Like, I'm not the biggest dude out there. So this plate carrier, although I wanted to like it, it had a lot to like about it, didn't work for me. But if you're a big dude, I'm talking like you're 6 foot or better and you wear an XL or better shirt, t-shirt, you're a big dude. The 511 plate carriers are actually really nice. They have a lot of padding. So especially if you're going to run heavy plates, the 511 plate carriers, they're kind of a one size fits all, but in fact it's a one size fits really big dudes. So if you're a really big dude, and there's some really big dudes on the team, when I was the commander of the tactical team, there were some big dudes, and for those guys, the 511 plate carriers are awesome. They're really padded, they're really nice, They're set up well. They're robust. I don't remember any of them having any problems. So the Cry, and if you're a bigger dude, the 511. Those are really good options. I also really like the Ferro Concepts Slickster. I like this one. I like it for a lot of reasons. It's pretty minimalist. It's, as the name implies, pretty slick. High speed, low drag, as the cool guy operator vernacular goes. Also, it has mag pouches built into the cummerbund, which is a really cool feature. When you're not running the magazines in there, it's just a slick, minimalist cummerbund. You can put the mag pouches in there, run several AR magazines without having to run mag pouches. And it's a really good size to carry one of those little Gideon Bibles. It's a perfect fit. I loved carrying my little Bible in that cummerbund. Good tactical EDC Bible pouch. The Slickster carrier, the Ferro Concepts, all of those, they're really good carriers. Now, one of the guys recently reached out to me and asked me about like an LBV chest rig. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Buy a U.S. military surplus, like a U.S. Marine Corps, not because the Marine Corps one is particularly any better, but because it's Coyote Brown, and Coyote Brown blends in with a lot of different environments. It may not be the most ergonomic thing, it may not be the most tactical looking, but if you actually want a practical one, it's a good one. It'll hold up fairly well. And the cool thing about this one for like a starter one is it's got MOLLE everywhere. And I'm not telling you to fill it. Walking around like a tactical Ninja Turtle with a bunch of body armor and a bunch of kit on you so you can barely move. Like somebody with one of those big puffy jackets on. But it'll let you run stuff where you want to, the way you want to. And once you've actually run it, whether it be going to competition or going to some training classes or even going on some actual missions, and you decide, I thought I was going to like this here, but I don't really like it here, let me move it. And then once you get kind of your own individual SOP of I like this here and all this other stuff I don't really need, then you can look for a better vest, a better chest rig that kind of has the stuff set up and you can run it the way that you want to, and you don't need all the extra space. But it's a good place to start to figure out where you like that stuff. And you probably won't regret having an old military LBV for, like, let's say you want a secondary shotgun rig loadout, or for somebody else, or whatever the case might be. So I'm going to tell you to get that military surplus LBV. Not because it's the best, not because it's the most tactical, not because of any other reason than it's really well made and it's really modular. And again, once you figure out, I like this pouch here and this pouch here and this doesn't really work for me, then you can start looking at all the different chest rigs they make and decide, yeah, that configuration works best with what I want. Instead of spending a ton of money on a chest rig and deciding, like, you know what, this doesn't have a place for this thing that I really like to carry in this way. And that military one is pretty big and it's got a lot of real estate, probably more than you're going to end up using or needing or wanting, but it lets you put stuff all around and see where you like to run your stuff. And they're not that expensive. So again, that's going to be my number one recommendation there. So after running, you may decide that you just want to put the stuff directly on your armor and save that LBV for something else. This episode is already going long. I'm not going to talk about helmets. Again, I'm not going to dive into the world of packs. I will talk about logistics. As cool as the kit is, if you are listening to this and you are the commander or the guy in charge, the HGIC, the head guy in charge, or whatever tactical unit, because hopefully for you, if you're doing this for realsies, gunfighting is a team sport. Logistics. Having like a staging area, a quick reaction force, a QRF. Those guys are maybe in kit waiting, and they have things like bailout bags. They have a literal duffel bag full of tourniquets and med supplies and IFAKs. They can come and quickly double down and be a giant force multiplier wherever they need to be deployed in a central hidden location. A QRF force, things like that, things like bailout bags. Things like having a staging area, having a rally point, having an objective rally point, having a fallback point. Logistics, although not super tactical, are important and may just save you and your men's lives. So, as much as it's not as cool to think about as the Tacti-Cool magazine pouch, logistics. Logistics are important. Being a good leader of men means being a good servant of men, even if that means you getting out there because you see that one of your guys is tired and giving him a break so that he can go sit down. Making sure your guys get breaks so that when they're actually out there, they're alert and ready. You could have 5 guys that look super armed, but you can tell they're just checked out. They've been on their feet for 8 hours, they haven't had a break, they haven't eaten, and they're just done. And there are some days that mission dictates that has to be that way, but if it doesn't, be a good leader by being a good servant to your men and taking care of them. Logistics, all the planning, the tedium that goes into being in charge. Because a good leader is one that serves. I'll get into that more in the tactical verse of the day. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to support, please consider becoming a patron. How about the cost of a box of ammo? Hopefully you'll consider becoming a patron to support this message, this ministry. Also Alpha Male Podcast, a men's ministry, and the straight up preaching on Simple Man sermons. Also, to be honest, if you want to help support me, and it's a great blessing. This is what I'm doing right now for a job. It allows me to get you guys so much content so frequently. Not to mention all the perks you get by becoming a patron. So, to be real with you guys, if you want to help me out, I'd appreciate it. For it is written, you shall not muzzle the ox while it treads out the grain. You can give at the Patreon link in the show notes. If you just want to give once, there's also a Venmo link in there. If you want to contact me, you can contact me at goodshepherdtraining.com. Also, if you don't even want to give that much, you can check out what's on goodshepherdtraining.com if you want something in return. There's some cool stuff in there. It's something as small as a sticker. A Gunfighter Life sticker. And a few other things on there. Again, goodshepherdtraining.com, or check out the Patreon link in the show notes. Enough about that. Tactical tips. The tactical tip of the day. A really good snack. Because tactical operators gotta eat too, right? Quest bars that can go in your pocket. And not all Quest bars are created equal. Some of the Quest bars have like a kind of coating on the outside. You don't want these in your pocket because they will melt and cause a giant mess. Several of the flavors, like the cookie dough, the cookies and cream, those don't have said coating. And they can be in your pocket and they might get a little misshapen, but they'll get the job done. They're good, healthy nutrition. Good thing to have, especially if you get stuck out on a long mission. No resupply, you're out there for, again, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. Good to have a little snack. If you're at your base of operations and you want a little snack, here's something I've been doing recently. I'm a big fan, if you listen, of 100% cocoa. Like, not candy, but 100% cocoa powder. It's full of good stuff. Antioxidants, really good high-quality fat, fiber. But I've for years been on a high-fat diet. And I have recently realized I probably should up my protein to fat ratio. So what I've been doing is just mixing raw eggs with pure cocoa powder. It's a good snack. It's a good, healthy, robust snack. Raw eggs, cocoa powder, mix it up, man up, and eat it. It's good, it's healthy, it's a good snack to recommend on a tactical tip. Now, back to the tactical verse of the day. Who better to look at as a perfect example of a commander, of a leader, than our Lord and Savior, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. From the Gospel of Matthew. But Jesus called them to himself and said, You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord over them, and those who are great exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you. But whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. And whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. That's our example. A servant, leader. The greatest man that ever lived, that ever walked the face of this earth. The creator of the universe, of all heaven and earth, got down and washed the feet of his disciples. Yeah, That's our example. Man up, men. Be a good leader. Be a good servant. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.